What's up, everybody? It is the 22nd of June,
Monday.
and this is Bevy coming to you from Hamtopia with the next installment of The Reaper and the Scribe. And we are on chapter 61. Everybody that is out there, you are very much appreciated. Thank you for joining us today. In the realm of nature, the first meeting was being held by the centaurs as to the protection of the child. Both the change at the top level within the realm of death and the emergence of the being from the dark realm on the plane of existence had been duly noted. Both Mother Nature and the High Council of the Centaurs were pleased that Dewhurst was back where he belonged. His love of her creatures had been well documented, and now he had partnered with a less aggressive Atkinson. The fact remained, however, that the child was vulnerable during his first weeks of life, and if anything happened to him, nature's full destructive power would be released upon the world with no compassion shown. Mother Nature instructed the centaurs to destroy anything that came close to the infant, and that they should guard him unto their deaths. The power of the centaurs was legendary, and their devotion to their creator unsurpassed. They would guard this child to their very extinction. Mother Nature felt more at ease after the meeting, because there was something else to consider. She had put great strength into two earth children, the guardian of the earth and her spouse, the sentinel. The birth of the couple's savior child in the realm of nature had increased their personal power 100-fold, and together they had become more powerful than any who had ever walked the plane of existence before them. Should something happen to the child, what havoc would they wreak upon her world? In the pathology department at the hospital, Sarah, the most powerful being in existence, was doing a handstand against the wall with her skirt tucked into her knickers when Tom Harper walked into the room. "God almighty! What are you doing now, you strange beast?" "I'm practicing yoga," replied Sarah. "This is a mortuary. We are here to find out why the people in our fridges are here. We are not here to tuck our skirts into our pants and parade upside down against the wall." "It's all right for you. You wear trousers so your underpants wouldn't show if you did this," was Sarah's upside-down answer. Gavin was on his mobile phone, looking out of his office window, and saw Tom talking to Sarah's feet. Feeling he must investigate this strange occurrence, he came out into the main room. Taking the phone away from his ear, he said, "Is everything okay?" Sarah smiled and nodded her head, banging it against the wall and collapsing in a heap on the ground. Tom just shook his head and said, "I wonder if she behaves like this at college." "I don't suppose so. I think she acts more like a student while she's there," said Gavin. The two men stood, looking at Sarah, who was now in a position that looked like she was halfway through a forward roll, only backwards. "Oh, God! You mean she's even worse there?" said Tom. Gavin just nodded his head and went back to his office, continuing his phone call. "Get up! You look ridiculous," said Tom. "The way I look is better than being an old grump." "There was no messing about when I was at university," instructed Tom. "That's why you're an old grump," retorted Sarah. "And you're a juvenile," said Tom. "Grump," said Sarah, as she got up and pulled her skirt out of her knickers. "And put your white coat on, Gorzilla." "Grumpula," said Sarah, blowing a raspberry. Gavin looked out at his team. One of them held a Ph.D., and the other was a student that had just taken her skirt from inside her pants. Both were calling each other names, and the Ph.D. was losing. Gavin pondered for a moment upon the wonderful contradiction that was his wife. The girl that was pulling her skirt from her pants and blowing a raspberry was one and the same as the woman who had saved humanity. He wondered what more was to come from this beautifully simple, fun-loving goth girl who had stolen his heart. In the Reaper's office, a discussion was taking place between the Reaper and two list makers. Normally, you would be left to deal with whatever crisis that emerged during your term as John Smith's list maker, but this is different to what you would normally expect, informed Tamara. "In what way?" asked Dixie. "It is no longer Chief Inspector Crawshaw that we are dealing with. This is now an entity from the dark realm, and it is here solely to find the whereabouts of the child." "Can't we just kill it?" asked Smith. "No. If we were to do that, the elders of the dark realm would know we were on to them, and they would quickly release their army of despair to kill indiscriminately. Only then would we be able to use force. But as the battle raged, the loss to humanity would be great," she answered. "How did it escape from that realm in the first place?" asked Dixie. "That is a good question. I don't know the answer to it," answered Tamara. "So we have to sit back and leave it free to roam?" asked Dixie. "No, and here is where we have an advantage. We know that the creature will have now engulfed Chief Inspector Crawshaw. His thoughts will merge with its limited and controlled ones. This means the creature from the dark realm will carry on what Crawshaw has been doing. With this in mind, we can get it to spend more time with you, Dixie. I will take over the list making, while you carry on your work with Chief Inspector Crawshaw. That way, we stay ahead of the game. Whilst the beings from the dark realm have strength in numbers, singularly, they are weak and quite easy to manipulate. You should be able to find out its whereabouts quite easily and stay in control of the situation," informed Tamara. "How do I stop it from discovering me?" asked Dixie. My darling, to human males, you are a devastatingly beautiful woman. And with my experience with the male of the species known as humanity, they lose the ability to think when faced with such beauty as yours, my dear. In other words, use what the gods gave you. He and whatever controls him will be putty in your hands. Do you mind? I'm male, said Smith. No, you're not. You are an immortal. We have no gender. We just use whatever gender we require, dealing with our needs, corrected Tamara. In that case, why am I aroused whenever I'm with Tom Harper? Asked John Smith. Are you? Asked Dixie. Dixie, everyone knows about John and Tom Harper. You fancy him because he is cute and intelligent, not bound by the stupid misgivings as to what is right or wrong. You enjoy what pleases you, informed Tamara. Why would it be wrong for me to fancy Tom? Asked Smith. We know it isn't wrong, but there are so many people in the world that would fight such a union, because to them it is unnatural, and then they would carry on with their surgically enhanced women and eat their genetically modified foods, said Tamara. The conversation went on about the rights and wrongs in the world, and eventually a plan hatched so that Dixie could start her work properly on the chief inspector and his unusual guest. In the other realm, Atkinson and Dewhurst were discussing the problem of the visitor from the dark realm. Have you battled this enemy before? Asked Atkinson. I have, on occasions, had to deal with the dark realm. Your father and I are the ones who made that realm, and sometimes have had to defend this realm against it. Removing negativity is never an easy thing. When humankind gained its awareness after the visitors mated with the primates, it did not show the tranquility of the visitors. The first hybrids were angry and possessive. The visitors tried to educate early humanoids, but to no avail. After a time, they gave up on Homo erectus and left them to their fate by leaving the planet, presumably to go back to their world. The experiment, in their eyes, was a complete failure, he continued. Yeah, my father told me about this, said Atkinson. The thing was, the visitors had taught them how to make tools for building, weapons for hunting, but the new humans began to use the weapons upon themselves. It wasn't too long before the species learned that violence meant power. For the first time, we were dealing with a species that would kill indiscriminately as an organized group, and these power-crazed humans began to lay waste to anything that stood in their way. For the first time, as reapers, we had to deal with negative energy at death. In an attempt to stop this energy from passing to the next life linked with the soul, we separated it at the reaping and placed it in a separate realm, a realm that no one could penetrate, a realm that would hold all the negative energy until it dissipated, informed Dewhurst. We're going to have to come up with a plan, because thousands of years worth of built-up hate is not a good thing to keep in one place. The destruction of the Dark Realm is long overdue, said Atkinson. I agree. Your father, however, wanted this to happen. He wanted all that built-up hate released upon the world. My father was a lunatic. His lust for power knew no bounds, answered Atkinson. For some strange reason, your father took pleasure in seeing the humans turn on themselves. Other dominant species long before, and including the dinosaurs, attacked each other. But it wasn't indiscriminate. It was for food or their place within society. The humans had turned this into a power struggle, and it wasn't long before the hunting parties had turned into armies. And as for the rest, you already know. At the police station, Chief Inspector Crawshaw was feeling better than he had in years. He, for some reason, now had a purpose, and knew he must fulfill that purpose. It must be Dixie, he thought to himself. Dixie, however, was the vehicle the entity from the Dark Realm was going to be using to gain access to the realm of nature. The chief inspector looked at the business card Dixie had left, and he began to dial the number. In the other realm, Atkinson saw Dixie's number being dialed and intercepted the call. Answering in Dixie's voice, he said, "Hello?" "Hello, Dixie. I'm sorry about my behavior earlier. I would like to make things better between us. Would you come for a picnic with me?" "Of course I would," answered Atkinson. "I will pick you up at your work," said the chief inspector. "I will be ready within the hour," was the reply. The calm afternoon at Atkinson, Dewhurst, and Smith was interrupted by the arrival of Atkinson in the Reaper's office. "You are making good use of this us being allowed on the same plane thing," quipped Smith. "Cute," replied Atkinson. "We have a breakthrough," he continued. "Does it involve me, my lord?" asked Dixie. "Very intuitive, Dixie. Yes, it does." "I will do anything, my lord," offered Dixie. "The Dark Realm has totally engulfed Crawshaw, and it wants to get into the realm of nature." "I will do my best to keep him out of there," she answered. "This is what I want it to look like you are doing." "I don't understand. Make it look like I am keeping him out?" Dixie replied. "Yes, make it look like you are trying to keep him out. I want Crawshaw to believe he is tricking you, and that way we get the entity, Crawshaw, and you all together once he is in there," informed Atkinson. "I see," said Dixie. Wouldn't it be safer just to deal with it here and keep the dark realm away from the realm of nature and the child?" asked Smith. "The plane of existence has had enough to deal with since the turn of the new millennium, and I am not sure it would survive another onslaught," said Atkinson. "How dangerous can one entity be?" asked Smith. "A battle with the dark realm on the plane of existence would be disastrous. So, if there is a conflict, I want to fight them in their realm, not yours," advised Atkinson. "I see. Why do we have to sort this out? Why can't Mother Nature take care of this now that the child is in her care?" asked Smith. "The dark realm has nothing to do with nature, unfortunately. It was my father's idea of a good storage place for souls that needed their negativity removed. Trouble is, he just left them there and never got around to coming up with a soul-cleansing idea. All the hatred and despair has just festered in this awful realm," advised Atkinson. "And this is the realm you want to send Dixie into?" asked an incredulous Smith. "Yes, the child, although powerful, will not be able to direct us. I need one of us in there as a beacon for us to attach to," answered Atkinson. "It is fine. I am more than willing to do this. It will help Tamara to trust me totally, and I am not at all scared," said Dixie. "Brave words, Dixie. I like that. But believe me, if we don't find you, you will be scared," he answered. Dixie stood firm, and if she held any fear, she certainly wasn't showing any of it. "And so it begins. The chief inspector will be picking you up here in 35 minutes. His intention is for you to take him into the realm of nature. Remember, you are not dealing with a simple human anymore. Do not make it obvious when you give in and take him there. We do not want the entity knowing we are on to them," said Atkinson. "You can count on me, sire," she said. "I know I can." "So can I," said Tamara, as she appeared in the office. "What are you doing here?" asked Atkinson. "In case we all forget, there are lists to make, and the reaper must reap his souls. So while Dixie is doing what she's doing for you, I will be doing what she would be doing for the reaper," said Tamara. "If this is going to keep happening, I'm going to need a bigger office," said Smith. "Can I have a word, darling?" said Tamara to Atkinson. "Of course you can. Now, all this depends on you, Dixie," said Atkinson, as he depressed a button on his phone and he and Tamara disappeared. "You'd better get yourself ready, Dixie. It would appear you have another quest on your hands," he said. Atkinson and Tamara re-emerged in the other realm. "You have my absolute attention," said Atkinson. "Permission to speak freely?" asked Tamara. "Of course." "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "I granted permission to speak, not permission to scream. "It should have been me going into that realm, not Dixie." "You are too valuable to lose," answered Atkinson. "It's the dark realm we are talking about here, not a jaunt over the ocean of someone's mind. She is not ready for such a thing." "She was my choice, which means she is ready. We only need her to stay alive long enough for us to find the nucleus of the realm." "Is she aware that she stays there if killed there?" "And what would be the point in telling her that?" "So that she knows and understands the risks. She is going, list maker, and that is the end of this conversation." "I'm not sure that only Dewhurst came back. You sound like your father. May I leave now, sire?" "I am not like my father, and stop calling me sire. Yes, it is risky, but it's not only Dixie going into that realm. We all are, except for you and Dewhurst." "No, I refuse to be the one left behind," demanded Tamara. "As you so rightly pointed out to me, the list-making and reaping must carry on," advised Atkinson. "Check the scrolls that told you that you were the chosen one. The same scroll states that the Reaper and the Scribe stay in their realm in these cases. You may be my lord, but you have to follow the rules, as we all do, Reaper." "John Smith is a Reaper too," said Atkinson. "He may be, but you are the Reaper." A short silence was ended by the entrance of Dewhurst. "Did I hear my name being shouted out?" "I beg your pardon, my lord," said Tamara, bowing her head. "I will not have this kind of subordination from a list-maker in our realm. However, Atkinson, she is right. Not about sending the list-maker into the dark realm, though. She is the most inexperienced. So if you are going to lose somebody, it would be best if it was her. She is right about you and I not going there. We must trust our warriors to do their duty while we keep things moving here. Furthermore, it would not be a good idea for the son of the one who put those wretched souls into that hell to go strolling through it now, would it?" said the wise old deity, albeit from a young-looking god. "Sorry, Tamara, and thank you for pointing that out," acquiesced Atkinson. "You truly are not your father. He never made mistakes. Or should I say, he never acknowledged them," said Dewhurst. Tamara smiled and said she was sorry too. Back on the plane of existence, Dixie bid goodbye to Smith and left his office. She tapped on her soon-to-be husband's door. "Hello, darling," greeted Johnson. "We need to talk," answered Dixie. "This sounds ominous," said Johnson. "Yes and no," was the strange reply. You have my undivided attention. I may be gone for a while. I have work to do in another realm. You are now one of us, so you have to understand that I must do this. I take it this is dangerous work, or we wouldn't be having this conversation, answered Johnson. It is, my love, but my strength will keep me safe, and your love will bring me back, she reassured. Do I need to know what is involved? No. You just need to know I must do this, and I am quite capable of doing it. This will be our life together, because there will be times when our roles reverse, and it will be me here, and you sorting things out on another plane, said Dixie. Well, my love, may the gods watch your back and return you to me soon. When do you have to leave? I am leaving now. I will return, said Dixie. Johnson rose from his chair, took his soulmate in his arms, and the pair kissed. He whispered in her ear, I love you. The part of Dixie's psyche that had become human began to let tears well up in her eyes, but the warrior within her held them back as she gave Johnson a smile and said, I love you too, darling, and I will be back. John Smith was sitting at his desk with Tamara sitting opposite him. She looked radiant as she scribbled away on the list of that evening's nearly departed. Sensing his attention, she looked up. Is there something amiss, John? Nope, not at all. Just... Tamara put her pen down and said, What's on your mind? Why has Dixie gone on this dangerous mission when you were far more qualified to do it? I asked the same question of Atkinson. The answer is that it is his wish that Dixie performs this task, she answered. John Smith just looked down at his documents, fiddling with his pen. Still looking at him, Tamara said, There is something else. Come on, John. What's on your mind? It's something that has been preying on my mind, and it has begun to take up too much of my thinking. Oh, I see. You know perfectly well that Dixie can handle this. It's not about Dixie at all, is it, John? I'm spending too much time thinking about Tom Harper, he confessed. The time you spend in the realm of death needs your entire attention. The time you spend out of there is your own, to think about whatever or whoever you want. But remember, you can have whoever you want. There are no rules, said Tamara. Is that what I'm doing wrong? I know nothing of this kind of thing. I've just said there are no rules. Humans are the worst when it comes to mating. They must follow rules that supposedly were laid down centuries ago by man. The act of love-making, as they like to put it, knows nothing of rules. It is an emotion. You follow your heart. It is that simple. Some of my most sensitive and passionate moments have been in the grip of a woman's embrace, said Tamara. So what you're saying is, if it feels good, do it? No, I'm saying, if it feels right, do it. Thank you. So, it doesn't matter if the Reaper is gay? It would only matter if Hollywood ever found out about you. It would not match their idea of your appearance. You know, the skull, bony finger, black ragged hooded cloak, and scythe. They would have you wearing a rainbow-colored cloak, and that would not be good for your image, darling, said Tamara. The Reaper and List-Maker both burst into spontaneous laughter as Tamara picked up her pen and began writing again. Chapter 62. Tom Harper was in the examination room, taking all the fluffy animal heads off his pens and pencils for the 7th time that week when Sarah walked in. "Why are you taking those off of the pens? I like 'em," she protested. "In that case, put them on the top of your pens, not mine. My pens are full. They've all got one on." "Sarah, this is a scientific examination room where we find out why people have died. Some people might think a more somber approach to our work is befitting." "Why?" "Because respect for the dead." "Why?" "Because we don't want doctors, police officers, or anyone else for that matter who has to call in here thinking that we're unprofessional." "Why do my pencil tops make us unprofessional?" "Because they do! Now go away, you little monster!" "Why?" Tom gave Sarah that certain look he used when he was about to shout Gavin, so she made a quick retreat, giggling. A little later, Gavin called Sarah into his office. "Are you feeling okay, Sarah?" "I think I'm feeling what you're feeling," she answered. "Something's happening. I feel like I did just before I went to the portal," said Gavin. "Yep, it came over me a few minutes ago. It has something to do with the realm of nature. I know that Tamara is back at the office for some reason," said Sarah. "I think we had better find out," he answered. Both depressed the Tamara button on their phones and transported themselves to John Smith's office. "I've been expecting you two," said Tamara. "What has happened?" asked Sarah. "Dixie is about to take your office intruder into the realm of nature and then follow it into the dark realm." "Isn't that dangerous for the child, taking it in there?" asked Gavin. "Yes, but he has good protection while he's in there. It is when they are all transported into the dark realm that he will be most at risk," she answered. Both Sarah and Gavin looked shocked and puzzled at Tamara's last statement. The dark realm has become overpopulated and unstable. Its very existence was never a good idea. If we don't deal with it now, there may be no reason to have the child, because if that realm spills over into this realm, there will be no hope for humankind, as it will feed on greed, want, and lust. It will combine with the worst kind of humans and then totally devour them, turning father against son, mother against daughter. In fact, the whole human race would be at war with itself, and it would be a war to extinction, she stated. The look of shock and puzzlement had changed to one of horror as Sarah said, "What do you want us to do?" "As soon as Dixie gets into the dark realm, we will all meet up and follow her inside. Once there, you draw your swords and kill everything you see," interrupted Atkinson as he appeared in the office. "A simple enough plan," said Smith. "You go into the dark realm and fix your attentions on the strongest source of power. That will be either the child or the main gathering of dark souls. You make your way to that power source, and the more you kill on the way, the stronger the signal will be that the child gives off. Be ready. The call can come at any minute, depending upon how long it takes Dixie to get there," he instructed. "Will Dixie be with the child?" asked Sarah. "I don't know," answered Atkinson. "She may be put to the sword as soon as she arrives in the dark realm, as she may be surplus to requirements," he continued. "But you will be able to bring him back, won't you?" asked Sarah. "No. Anyone dispatched in that realm stays in that realm." "And you're okay with that?" asked Smith. "We are all expendable," instructed Atkinson. After being picked up by Crawshaw, Dixie sat in the passenger seat, feeling quite relaxed. She knew what lay ahead and had accepted the conditions of the job in hand. She knew that if she worried about it, the entity controlling Crawshaw would soon discover her intentions, and she certainly didn't want that. Looking at the driver, she said, "Where are we going for lunch?" "The pub just down the road from the police station," said Crawshaw in a direr tone than usual. Dixie looked at him closely. It was as if the unknown entity that had engulfed him was showing its true self, because he really was the worst human she had ever encountered. "Sounds wonderful. What are we doing afterwards? Going back to your place?" "No," was his quick response. Dixie was rather pleased with this answer, because she wasn't looking forward to any carnal acts with him before the possession with this thing, and he seemed even worse now. "In that case, what are we doing?" "Let's just eat and see what happens," replied Crawshaw. They drove on to the public house, and once inside perused the menu. Looking up from the list of simple pub food, Dixie noticed the chief inspector was sweating quite profusely. "Are you all right, my dear?" she asked. "I'm fine. What do you want to eat?" was the gruff reply. I'm torn between the meat pie and chips the pasty and chips or the fish and chips?" said Dixie, wondering if they did chips and chips as their special. "Make your mind up. We haven't got all day." "In that case, I will have the fish, without the chips, if that's okay." "Please yourself," said Crawshaw, as he made his way to the bar to order the food. As well as the fact that Crawshaw was sweating, he was emitting a rather nasty odor, the likes of which she had never experienced before. His skin was turning ever so slightly darker, and dark rings were appearing around his eyes. As a couple, they looked odd, because she was devastatingly beautiful, and he was growing uglier by the minute. He came back with 2 pints of lager, roughly placing one in front of her, spilling some of its contents. Dixie looked up at him and said, "If you want this date to go any further, you are going to have to change your attitude and the way you look. I think I deserve a bit more respect than I am receiving." With that, as if startled, Crawshaw got up and calmly walked to the gents' toilet. Once inside, the entity exited him and took residence within the circuitry of his mobile phone. The dark shadows cleared from his eyes, and the smell dispersed. He was a bit disoriented, suddenly finding himself in the gents' toilet, but had a vague idea of what was happening. He rinsed his face in the hand sink and dried himself off. The sweating had stopped, and the moist, dark patches that had appeared under the arms of his jacket disappeared. He, in fact, looked quite good in the reflection of the mirror in front of him. Straightening his tie, he smirked back at himself and rejoined his date. Dixie noticed he was back as Crawshaw, but knew the entity was nearby. Not letting her inner thoughts give away any information about her knowledge of the beast, she smiled and said, "Ooh, you look much better, darling. Were you feeling unwell?" "I did come over a bit faint, but I feel fine now," he replied. "Now, where were we?" she asked. "Shall we go for a walk in the woods after lunch?" suggested the chief inspector. "Well, that depends upon whether I will be safe or not, doesn't it, Chief Inspector?" "Of course you'll be safe," he replied. "I don't know if I want to be safe," she teased. "Oh, I see. We'll see what develops when we're in the woods." "In that case, I would love to go for a stroll in the woods with you," said Dixie. Crawshaw ate his lunch, and Dixie had a few morsels of fish. Little over 10 minutes had passed when Crawshaw said, "Shall we go, then?" The couple stood up and left the rather dismal public house and got back into the car. The experience of the food had done nothing to stay in Dixie's memory, although the chief inspector had devoured his pie and chips. The drive to the woods was quite pleasant by the standards she had come to expect from her time spent with the chief inspector. As the car pulled up in a lay-by at the edge of the wooded area, Crawshaw said, "If we are going to have any romance, we need to get the questions out of the way first." "Questions, Chief Inspector?" "My questions concerning your dealings with Atkinson, Dewhurst, and Smith, and a certain matter of me closing the case on them." "The case is not against the new company. It is against Atkinson, and Dewhurst," she informed. "That makes no difference to me," said Crawshaw. "What would you like to know?" "You have told me you have documented evidence placing Atkinson at the scenes of all the unsolved murders?" "Yes, I do," said Dixie. "You're not just a secretary, are you?" he probed. "I think we both know the answer to that question," said Dixie. "You could be setting me up," he quipped. "Setting you up for what, Chief Inspector?" "This whole thing could be an elaborate plot to get your boyfriend back in his old job." "Oh, please. You are safe in your job. My boyfriend, as you call him, is quite happy doing what he's doing," she replied. "Okay. I will set a little test first to see if you are who I think you are, and if you can demonstrate what you can do." "Really, Chief Inspector, this is starting to get boring." "Shall I address you as Dixie, or should I call you List Maker?" "You can call me Joan of Arc, if it pleases you," said Dixie. "Come now, List Maker. Clearly, I know who you are, and also know how you people can move between different realms." "If you know all this, why do you need me? It sounds like you already have enough to go marching in with the boys in blue and close the place down." "Indeed I do, and believe me, I will close that dismal place down. But first, you can give me the one thing that will seal the deal." "And what is that, Chief Inspector? I'm afraid you're a little late if it's my virginity you require." "Hardly. I need evidence of one of the different realms." "Are you out of your mind?" At that point, the entity slipped back into Crawshaw, and his face altered. "I am not out of my mind, and you will take me into another realm." Dixie knew the entity was back in charge, but kept her vital signs perfectly normal as she said, "In that case, why don't I take you to the other realm, and we can take tea with Atkinson?" The dark entity inside Crawshaw made him recoil with fear. "No, not that realm," he stuttered. "Would you like to take your chances in the realm of death, Chief Inspector?" Dixie asked with a grin. "No, not that one either. I just want to go to a nice realm that is different to this one." Knowing she couldn't mention the dark realm, she said the only realm that she could use. The only realm left is the realm of nature. Crawshaw, who was now looking dark-eyed again, said, "Yes, take me there." "But what good will taking you to another realm do? What will it prove? And what happens if Atkinson finds out that I have taken you there?" said Dixie, making him work all the way. "It will be our secret," said Crawshaw. "Tomorrow. I will take you there tomorrow," she ensured. "Now! I need to go there now!" he insisted, as he began sweating again. "You will have to be patient, Chief Inspector. One more day won't hurt now, will it?" she teased. Again, in the shadows, Atkinson stood, monitoring the situation, a situation that Dixie seemed to have perfectly under control. The drive back was sullen, and Dixie could feel the hate emanating from Chief Inspector Crawshaw. Even his expression was changing. He was looking older, and his scowl had become more intense. His odor was becoming unbearable, and she opened the car window for some fresh air. The whole atmosphere in the car was now heavy, and she wished the drive back would soon be over. As the car came to an abrupt halt at the offices of Atkinson, Dewhurst, and Smith, she quickly alighted. "Tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. sharp," said the gruff-voiced Chief Inspector. 12:30 p.m., said Dixie, as she turned and walked towards the building. The Chief Inspector's car sped off, and Dixie made her way to the main door. Once inside, Dixie acknowledged the Sunny Acres mob and went straight to John Smith's office. Upon entering, she was greeted by both Smith and Atkinson. "Well done, Dixie," said Atkinson. Smith just smiled. "Thank you, my lord," answered Dixie, bowing her head. "You're doing the my lord thing again. But I must say you are doing well, my dear. I liked the way you handled that situation," announced Atkinson. "I am glad you approve, sire. I did feel your presence," she said. "Let's just say I was taking part in a quality control exercise, and you passed the test. Tomorrow is when the real work begins, and this path you will have to tread carefully and alone," he informed. "I am ready, my lord, and I will not let you down." "I know this to be true, Dixie." Atkinson returned to his realm, leaving only Smith and Dixie in the office. "Tell me, Dixie, how do you feel about all this?" "Honored, sir," she replied. "This could be a one-way ticket. Atkinson has no remorse about that," said Smith. "I know, but not long ago I was one of thousands of beings with little importance. Now I can make a difference," she replied. "You already have." "I shall do this of my own free will. Tomorrow I will enter the realm of nature, then on to the dark realm, and I will return, she stated. Within the realm of nature, the child had begun to grow. He was a baby in human years, but he was now the size of a 12-year-old boy. He was strong and intelligent. His time with the centaurs had been well spent. Much had he learned from these great beasts of the forest. His strength was as great as theirs. His understanding of things was very advanced, and the way he perceived situations matched the leader of the centaurs, so much so that they could offer him no more, and what was supposed to take more than 6 full months had indeed taken less than 6 weeks. The sky over the ring of purple-tipped mountains that stood as bastions to the centaurs grew lighter as day broke magnificently. Great outstretched fingers of light dispersed the night sky, chasing away the bright stars. Birds began to sing their dawn chorus. The animals of the forest began to forage, and the leader of the centaurs stood on a rock. On his back sat the child. Both centaur and child looked at an opening that was occurring in the trees in front of them as the great oaks moved to create a pathway to their fortress stronghold. Fairy folk fluttered along the path as if to check its safety. Wolves then followed and lined the path on either side as Mother Nature walked effortlessly into their kingdom. All the creatures of the forest, including the centaurs, kneeled before her and offered her praise. The child sitting on the centaur's back looked on. His eyes were transfixed upon Mother Nature as she spoke. "Creatures of the ring of mountains, hear me now." Every pair of eyes were glued to her, and all ears pricked as the goddess spoke. "Nature's child has reached his first stage of development long before we expected. It is now time for his next step," she said as she walked over to the sated child, flowers growing from the places in the earth where her feet had touched. As she moved to his position, birds flew around the 3 of them. She held out her hand to the boy. He took her hand and slid himself off the leader of the centaurs, who trotted away to join the gathered crowd. Mother Nature took the child in her arms and embraced him. A transference began to happen between the 2 as a whirlwind twisted around them. From the opposite end of the clearing, mighty oaks began to part again as a very tall female warrior of immense power approached. Her attire was stunning. Knee-length armor-plated boots were laced up the fronts of her long legs, which were clad in chainmail up to her tiny gladiator kilt. Her sword was missing from its scabbard, and its belt hung loosely down her left side. The chainmail continued over her body and down her arms, a golden breastplate inscribed with lettering that told of her powers, and shoulder plates of shimmering gold with large spikes protruding from them glinted in the sunlight. Upon her right hand was a golden gauntlet. Her crowning glory was her beautiful locks of blonde hair, long and flowing, dancing in the sunlight. Finishing her attire was a hairband that looked more like a small crown. Again, the animals knelt down as she walked into the vortex. As Sarah joined Mother Nature, they held hands around the child. Both Mother Nature and Earth Mother began to chant the inscribed words from Sarah's breastplate, and their ancient knowledge was now shared with the growing child. The chanting continued from within the vortex as the child grew into a man, and what a man he was! The vortex cleared, and 3 beings stood, tall and proud. To his right stood Sarah, and to his left stood Mother Nature, the naked figure of man that only gods could produce, surveyed his new domain. He was taller than his 2 mothers, standing 9 feet in height, a perfect specimen of raw manhood. His head was magnificent, with strong features, including a broad jawline. His eyes were ice blue, with cat-like pupils. His eyelids looked as if they had eyeshadow on them, but in fact were the natural color of the purple-topped mountains. His eyebrows were fair and curved the shape of his well-formed brow line. He had a perfectly shaped nose, not too big and not too small. It resembled the nose of the Greek god Zeus. In fact, most of his features could be likened to that Grecian god of the sky. Unlike Zeus, he was clean-shaven. His mouth was soft, with lips that were quite full for a man's. His hair was a shorter version of his Earth Mother's warrior guy's hair. It was golden and shoulder length, kept in place by a 1/2-inch wide leather band tied at the back. He had very broad shoulders, heavy set with muscle, and his gigantic back was a perfect V-shape as he narrowed at the waist. His chest was beautiful and matched his strong back, his pectoral muscles well defined and taut, but not overly round. Just as his back, his chest was V-shaped down to his waist, but was chiseled over his emphasized abdominal musculature. He was narrow at the hips, and his buttocks were rock hard. His phallus, although at rest, was a magnificent sight to behold, its length and girth in perfect scale to the rest of his huge body. He began to widen out again at his strong thighs, then narrowed at his calves. Apart from his large size, he looked like a human, albeit a perfect human, in every detail. He only differed in 2 ways. His hands and feet were webbed, and his eyes were cat-like. From above, several golden eagles began to drop feathers upon him. Snakes slithered to where he stood and wrapped themselves around his legs, shedding their skins upon them. Porcupines laid spines at his feet, and the fairies covered him in webbing spun by the industrious arachnids of the forest. Mother Nature raised her hand, and all the different materials began to fuse together all over his body, making a suit of clothing like no other ever crafted. The first lining of this incredible costume was a snakeskin bodysuit, enabling him to slide away into the smallest of hideouts. Covering that was chainmail made from super-strengthened porcupine needles. A covering of spotter webbing ensuring strength and invisibility was next, should he need it. Upon each shoulder, a scattering of golden eagle feathers had been crafted, offering him flight. His two mothers looked upon him and delighted in the image in front of them. At the east side of the clearing, once again, the great oaks moved apart, and the sound of marching feet heralded another entrance. An army of soldier ants filed into the clearing. With them walked Gavin, carrying a helmet made of gold in the same design of his Earth Mother's crowning headpiece. A spear, just like the staff of Mother Nature's, came next, and the third and final piece was a shield like the one Tamara used. These weapons, when used together, would now wield the strength of 4 of the most powerful beings in existence. He graciously accepted the weapons, placing the helmet upon his head, the shield upon his arm, and the spear in his hand. All of the animals who had gathered to witness this unprecedented event began to look to the west side of the clearing. As for the fourth and final time, the great oaks began to part. The sound of hooves could be heard, clip-clopping down the new pathway and into the clearing. Following Tamara was Juliantrium, a beautiful gray-winged unicorn with a flowing white mane and tail, who trotted behind Tamara like the world's greatest dressage pony. The unicorn, who towered above Tamara, stared at the being in the middle of the opening as Tamara knelt in front of him, saying, "To the man who people will follow, the one who will save the planet, I offer you Juliantrium. She will be your travel partner, providing every transport you will ever need. She is a shapeshifter. She can morph into anything that is needed to assist you from now on." Tamara handed the reins to him and withdrew. Mother Nature looked at Juliantrium and gave her a loving smile. She then turned back to the Earth Mother, and with her stepped forward and shouted, "Humankind has now received its last chance to survive." Both she and Sarah lifted their offspring's hands aloft and said in unison, "We present to you, Paladin." The animals of the forest moved closer to him, touching him gently with their wet noses. Each one of them wanted to be near him. His two mothers let go of his hands, and the animals took him into the clearing and gathered around him. He smiled and spoke softly in a language they all seemed to understand. Mother Nature and Earth Mother looked on, then turned to each other and embraced. He has a duty to perform, and will join you in your realm, said Mother Nature. My realm needs him for sure, answered Sarah. Indeed it does, but he must tread a darker path first, informed Mother Nature. Why? He must help right a very old wrong. Once done, his work on the plane of existence will begin.